We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Because today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
Well, greeting, friends and fellow patriots. Welcome to the We the People Convention news and opinion radio show and podcast. I am Tom Zawistowski, your host. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention. And for those of you who are watching the podcast, you can see that we're back in Ohio again after taking a few days last week to kind of think about things and try to understand better what's going on and what you and I and all of us can do to make our world a better place. If you're listening on one of our 5 radio stations on the radio here in Ohio on Saturday mornings, welcome to all of you. For anyone who's watching the podcast, which you can watch at wethepeopleconvention.org, the podcast player is right there on the front page. We usually post our podcasts around noon on Fridays, and then it's up 24/7. You can watch it anytime you want. You can do so on your iTunes, on YouTube, on Roku TV, on Amazon Fire, and of course on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org. This show is paid for and brought to you by the donors to the We the People Convention, and we thank them for their support because, as we've been talking the last couple of weeks on the show, we are being totally banned and censored on Facebook. On our emails are being blocked, our website is being blacklisted, and so this radio network is our primary method of communicating the truth to citizens of Ohio and other parts of the country. So welcome to all of you who have joined us for today's radio show and podcast. I'm awful glad to be with you. We've got a lot to cover. I think I'm going to be setting a record for the most videos that I'm going to play in one show, but there was so much going on this week that I really wanted to capture some of the top people talking about what's going on. And I just think that we need to pay attention right now. For those of you, who are trying to figure out, what's going on, why are these people burning our cities? Why is this death of the George Floyd, being so blown out of proportion? Don't get me wrong. It was horrible what happened to him. The police officer should have never, stayed on him, killed him. That justice is going to be served there. But that death is not a metaphor, as you'll learn in the show, for our police force in this country or for our country. And yet these leftist groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and the Communist Party USA and Acorn and all the other lefty groups that the Democratic Party is affiliated with, they are using this to cause chaos in our nation. And they're doing a great job of it. And they've got the support of the media. And this is very serious, folks. For those of us who have been in the Tea Party for the last 10, 15 years, we've studied this. We understand the tactics that are being used against us and against you. And as I said in last week's show, very sophisticated psychological tools are being used to influence you and to get you to support something you shouldn't support. All right. And we're seeing this. We're seeing this all over the country. So we're going to get into it. But a very big development happened this week. And that was, that Antifa has basically taken over part of Seattle, Washington. And they've taken over a 6 square block section of Seattle. And they're saying that, it's not subject to any rules, any laws of Washington State or the U.S. Constitution. They want to abolish the police force. It's crazy time, right? That's what it is. It's crazy time. The people who did it, the mayor of Seattle, basically surrendered. Just a day after Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkin forced the city police to surrender the East Precinct Police Station in Antifa City, which is what they're calling it in Seattle. Councilwoman Kashama Sawant unlocked City Hall so that the domestic terrorists could take that as well. And now the city leadership has allowed the group of militant miscreants to keep a 6-block area near the East Precinct Station as their own. And the police chief was on Fox last night saying, listen, we wanted to protect the city and the mayor surrendered. Well, that's the problem, folks. We've got people who are surrendering, who are not upholding their oath of office. When you're a mayor, you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, uphold law and order. What about those businesses? What about the homes that are in that 6-block area, right? This is what the left does. This is what communists does. The communists do. They are bullies. They're going to use force to get their way. And in a real society, in a society that is stable, they are pushed back. You use force to counter their force, because who's got more force than the U.S., right? Our military is the biggest in the world. You think we can't defeat Antifa? And our police forces are strong. So why aren't we doing it? And that's really the problem. So last week we talked about the fact that President Trump had declared Antifa a terrorist organization. They are a terrorist organization. And then AG Barr said they were going to follow up. And so now I'm going to play a clip for you, about that. But it was your calls. We asked you to call AG Barr and say, go after the funders of Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And now it looks like they're looking into that and they're going after that. And so I'm going to play this clip for you so you can hear what AG Barr told Bret Baier just the other day.
Half of my interview with Attorney General William Barr. We begin this evening from the courtyard of the Department of Justice by continuing the conversation about the organized elements of some of the rioting and looting. Barr singled out Antifa yesterday, but also said authorities are seeing a, quote, witch's brew of extremist groups.
We have, extreme right groups trying to look like extreme left groups. We have extreme left groups masquerading as extreme right groups. We have players on both sides trying to spin up violence. So it's a complicated situation.
But you expect that there'll be more arrests at the organizing part of it?
Yes.
Soon?
I can't put a time limit on these investigations, but I think we are very much focused on getting on top of these groups.
So there you have it, that they're focused on these groups. And I was listening to a podcast this week, the DNI who just stepped down, Rick Grendell, did an interview on a podcast where he was talking about the one thing that you need to understand is once you're declared a terrorist organization, if you're their accountant, you're in trouble. If you're their bank and you have the money for BLM or for Antifa and you're holding their money, the feds are coming and they're going to take that money. And so there's lots of ramifications for this. And I think Bill Barr is very serious about it, particularly when this group takes over a part of a city. And President Trump is screaming, you got to take care of this now, or I'm going to send in federal troops. What they're trying to do, what Antifa is trying to do, is start a civil war. They want gunplay. But unfortunately, sometimes that's what you got to do. You've got to have gunplay in order to keep these people in line. You cannot let people just take over parts of your country. And so, this whole thing has moved into this defund the police movement, right? Which we just talked about a little bit last week. And what is that about? Well, I said, they want you to defund the police so they can win, right? In Minneapolis, the radicals have taken over their city council. So what do they want? Well, they don't want the police to stop them. So they wanted to defund the police. And this is idiocy. And so now they're taking this, and again, I don't know if it was as crazy to you as it was crazy to me, but to have major TV networks interrupt programming, not once, not twice, but 3 times to cover live the race baiter Al Sharpton, ruling over these memorial services for George Floyd in Minneapolis, in North Carolina, where apparently he grew up, and then in Houston. They were treating this guy like he was Martin Luther King Jr. It's a fraud. It's all a fraud. What happened to this man was terrible. but it's not the big national, thing that they want you to believe. But they're doing this. They're putting it on TV, trying to make you think that this is true, that the police are racist and that you're a racist and that America is racist. There isn't a shred of evidence that anything is true. If anything, you could make a case that America is now racist against white people. That's the truth. But they don't want to talk about the truth. But a guy who did talk about the truth, and we're so proud of him because Ohio's Jim Jordan is now, on the Judiciary Committee because Mark Meadows had stepped down to become the chief of staff for Trump. And so he got to make an opening statement yesterday in the House Judiciary hearing about this violence. And I'm just going to play part of it. The rest of it is at wethepeopleconvention.org. You can go listen to the rest of it, but I'm going to play a couple minutes here. So here we go.
There are 330 million people in this great country, the greatest nation ever. Not perfect, but the best nation ever. And they understand, the American people understand it's time for a real discussion, real debate, real solutions about police treatment of African Americans. Americans also understand that peaceful protest, exercising their First Amendment liberties, honors George Floyd's memory, and it helps that discussion, that debate, and those solutions actually happen. The people of this great country, you know what else they understand? You know what else they get? They understand that there is a big difference between peaceful protest and rioting. There is a big difference between peaceful protest and looting. There is a big difference between peaceful protest and violence and attacking innocent people. And there is certainly a big difference between peaceful protest and killing police officers. You know what else they get? You know what else the American people fully understand? They know, as the chairman said, the vast, vast majority of law enforcement officers are responsible, hardworking, heroic first responders. They're the officers who protect the Capitol, who protect us every single day. They're the officers who rushed into the Twin Towers on 9/11. They're the officers in every one of our neighborhoods, in every one of our communities, every day, every night, every shift they work, who put their lives on the line to keep our communities safe. And guess what Americans also get? Guess what else they understand? They know it is pure insanity to defund the police. And the fact that my Democrat colleagues won't speak out against this crazy policy is just that frightening. This Congress started off with the Democrats, folks on the left saying we should abolish ICE, then moved to we should abolish the entire Department of Homeland Security, and now they're talking about abolishing the police. This is wrong, and the American people know it's wrong. We should honor the memory of George Floyd and work hard so that nothing like it ever happens again. And we should honor the memory of Dave Patrick Underwood and work hard so that nothing like that ever happens again. A week and a half ago, our mission was clearly stated. 11 days ago in Florida, the President of the United States clearly stated what our mission should be. President Trump said this: I stand before you as a friend and ally to every American seeking justice and peace, and I stand before you in firm opposition to anyone exploiting tragedy to loot, rob, attack, and menace. Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos, are the mission at hand. Well said, Mr. President. Healing, not hatred, justice, not chaos. That is our mission.
That is our mission, right? No one could say it more clearly, more concisely. I wanted to hear that. There's a few more minutes of that on either side. If you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, you can hear that. But Jim Jordan said the truth. It's insane to want to defund the police and ICE and DHS. And only people who want anarchy, only people who want to destroy our country. We are a nation ruled by law, not by men. So why would you want to get rid of the law? Because you want to rule by men. That's why they're communists. That's why I tell you they're all communists. That's why the Democratic Party doesn't exist anymore. They're all communists. And man, if you want to get a really crazy take on all this, I put a video on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org by Tucker Carlson this week that was frightening, because Tucker Carlson says that they don't really want to defund the police force. What they want to do is get rid of the police because they don't control them. Most of the police voted for Donald Trump. They, the Democrats, the left, want to put new police in who will be their thugs, who will be their brown shirts, who will be there to enforce the leftist ideology, folks. That's what they want to do. They don't want to replace them with social workers. They want to replace them with brown shirts. Have you heard the people? This is actually happening. There are people telling young people that if your parents will not pledge to support Black Lives Matter, you should never talk to them again. You should disown them. You know what that is? That's Nazi Germany. That's the Soviet Union. Rat on your parents. That's how you get there. That's what's going on. And we better take this seriously. And we better stand up and fight back. And I was really glad to see this week that the New York Police Department union finally stood up and fought back. Listen to this little clip.
I am not Derek Chauvin. They are not him. He killed someone. We didn't. We are restrained. And you know what? I'm saying this to all the cops here. Because you know what? Everybody's trying to shame us. The legislators, the press. Everybody's trying to shame us into being embarrassed about our profession. But you know what? This isn't stained by someone in Minneapolis. It's still got a shine on it. And so do theirs. So do theirs. Stop treating us like animals and bugs and start treating us with some respect. That's what we're here today to say. We've been left out of the conversation. We've been vilified. It's disgusting. It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. And it's so great to see him stand up. And where are the other police chiefs? Where are the other unions? Where are the politicians standing up for their police force? If you're watching the podcast, you'll see them wearing a new button today. It says, "We support our police," because we must support our police. The thugs are the rioters. They're not the police officers. And we put out in an email you should have gotten on Friday that we have a new billboard we're hoping to fund to put up around Ohio that says, "We the people support our police and we will not allow them to be defunded." We the People Convention. And I hope you'll donate to help us put these billboards up because we support our police. We don't support thugs. And we're not going to support the lies that the police are racist when they're not. 10, we talked about this last week, only 10 blacks that were unarmed were killed by police last year. 5 of them attacked the policeman. In the other 4 cases, it was an accident once, and the other 4, the officers were charged. This is the reality. We are not the most racist nation in the world. We are the least racist nation in the world. And on the billboard we want to put up, it says, "Americans are proud of our historic efforts to become the least racist nation on earth." I'm proud of that. You should be proud of that. Do not accept the lie. Don't do what the corporations are doing, because this week we started to see that these giant corporations are donating. They're paying protection money. And you can see that story at WeThePeopleConvention.org. U.S. civil rights groups have received a surge of corporate donations since Minneapolis police killed George Floyd. A Financial Times review of statements from U.S. companies found that more than $450 million in pledges to groups focus on social and racial justice have been donated. Walmart and its foundation promised to put in $100 million in a new racial equity center. Warner Music and Sony Music announced a $100 million fund. And Nike pledged $40 million. Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Spotify. Where are they supporting the police? They're paying protection money from the thugs. But just like Drew Brees, and I don't know if you follow sports, but Drew Brees, the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, had done a post saying that he will not dishonor the flag. And then his teammates in the league and everybody attacked him, and he backed down. And then they still didn't leave him alone. Learn the lesson. You can't give in to the mob. That's why our founding fathers did not make us a democracy. What you're seeing in the streets, that's quote unquote democracy. That was the French Revolution. Ours was the American Revolution. That's why we're a republic and not a democracy. Stop believing the lies and fight back. And so I'm going to play one more clip before we take a break. This is Bob Woodson, a true civil rights person who fought for civil rights, and he's going to tell you what he thinks about all of this.
He's the founder of the Woodson Institute. He joins us now to assess what we're seeing on television. Mr. Woodson, thanks so much for coming on tonight. I'm just going to throw it to you. You've been watching.
Pleased to be here, Tucker.
Thank you. What do you make of this?
Well, Tucker, what you were saying about it really being a class, as a veteran of the civil rights movement, one of the great promises we gave to low-income blacks is that if you were to elect blacks to public office through Voting Rights Act, and we were running those institutions, that all of Black America would be better off. In the past 50 years, $22 trillion have been spent on poverty programs. 70% goes not to the poor, but those who serve poor people. So many of those people taking office use this money to create a class of people who are running these cities. And now, after 50 years of liberal Democrats running the inner cities where we have all of these inequities that we have, race is being used as a ruse, as a means of deflecting attention away from critical questions such as why are poor blacks failing in systems run by their own people if race was an issue, even the criminal justice system. And if we continue to look at life through a racial prism, when evil wears a black face, it will escape detection and therefore correction.
What a great line. What a great line. There's a man telling you the truth, right? So every time they try to tell you that it's whites that have kept blacks down, listen to Dr. Woodson. Why? We talked about this last week. You can't tell me we're a racist country when the police chief, when the prosecutor, when the city council, when the mayors, when the state attorney general are all blacks, and you're going to claim racism? Listen, the problems in the black community have to do with black leadership failing to serve their people. That's the truth. It's not our fault. We've given $22 trillion out of white guilt. And what have we gotten? We've gotten 70% of it stolen by these race baiters who use poor blacks to keep power. It's time for us to defund them, to fight back. Let them destroy their cities. But we've got to start to fight back against them, and hopefully AG Barr is going to start defunding them and giving blacks a chance. Because right now, they're on the government plantation, let me tell you, and it ain't run by whites. That's a fact. We're going to take a break. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski.
Hello, this is Ann Kasmerick, president of Liberty Camp for Kids in Portage County, Ohio. Liberty Camp for Kids is where students in grades 1 through 6 experience the founding of our nation. This year's camp will be held from July 20th through the 24th from 9 till noon. The cost is $30 per camper. If you're interested in our camp, being a volunteer, or even starting one of your own, go to www.libertycampforkids.com.
Buckeye Firearms Association is Ohio's #1 gun rights organization, protecting the rights of Ohio's 4 million gun owners. And you can get our weekly gun rights newsletter free. Receive breaking news and urgent alerts on gun laws. Stay up to date on self-defense and shooting sports. Discover pro-gun activities and events near you. Get your free gun rights newsletter now at bfanews.org. That's bfanews.org. bfanews.org.
All right, we're back, and I want to remind you that Liberty Camp is just a month away, and there's only about 20 spots left. So if you want your child or grandchild to go to Liberty Camp for Kids, go to libertycampforkids.com and sign them up right away. There's only about 20 seats left, and by the way, they don't have to wear masks because it's outdoors, and they'll do all the safety things. It's going to be safe, and it's going to be fun, and they're going to learn about the real United States, about the real founding of America. They're going to experience it, and they're going to know as young people what's right about our country and not just think we're the worst country on the face of the earth. All right, so let's go back to the stories about Antifa and Black Lives Matter. I always look for things that are telling. I mean, one of the things I learned about World War II is that they would, the U.S. and Britain, would look at details that were like in German newspapers to help piece together what was really going on during the war. And we do the same thing. And one of the things that was a big tell for me was that last weekend, they were talking about this giant protest that was going to take place in Washington. And I was concerned, because they were talking about having 1 million people. And I thought to myself, if they get 1 million people to march on the White House last Saturday, then we're headed for civil war. But fortunately, the protest was a big flop. And that tells me that they're not as strong as the media is trying to make it out to be. And so, what happened is Twitter's blue checkmark mafia and the fake media told us anywhere from 1 million to 100,000 protesters would swarm Washington, D.C. on Saturday, and only 10,000 showed up, which means the quote experts were only off in the range of 99%. It's all astroturf, folks. This is from Breitbart. John Nolte's column. I know the corporate media are doing a pretty good job of convincing news addicts that there's some massive shift going on here, but there's not. It's just a lot of noise. It's just radical far left activists mobilizing en masse and colluding with the corporate media to make it sound like something big is happening, that America is waking up, that America is woke. Sorry, no. Neurotic moral cowards like Mitt Romney and Drew Brees might have been suckered into this contrived moral panic. But as I explained below, that 10,000 number reveals so much. So let me get this straight. We just elected a black president for 2 terms. We just brought back black employment down to a record low. There is no one in the world defending what happened to George Floyd, but only now is America waking up to the systemic racism problem. Please give me a break. There is no systemic racism in America, and everyone knows it. All I am saying is that there is so little racism in America, they have to invent racism, and people know that. If you go to WeThePeopleConvention.org, you can read that rest of his column. It's a great column that explains that these guys are not as big as they pretend to be. So we need to see with our own eyes, hear with our own ears, and think with our own brains. Okay, we have to ask questions, and then we have to have the courage to act in defense of our personal freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Here's another tell for you. In the middle of all this, the Rasmussen poll on Friday, June 5th found that President Donald Trump's job approval rating among African-American voters peaked at an all-time high of 41% in the wake of the rioting related to the death of George Floyd. Of the 41% likely black voters who support the president, 25% said they strongly support what he's doing. The poll even showed that 15% of Democrats strongly approve of the president's leadership. Okay? And you'll also notice that they had a poll out that said Joe Biden was leading the president by 15 percentage points. 15 percentage points. Total propaganda. I told a friend of mine, it's almost inverse. The higher they say that Hillary or Joe Biden is beating Donald Trump, the more Donald Trump is winning. That's why they're doing it, because those numbers for black Americans, even the 25% who strongly support Donald Trump, if Donald Trump gets 25% of the black vote, folks, this election's over. It never even starts. It's a 46 state or 48 state rout. They know that. That's why they're doing that. Now, I got to say, I got an email from a guy named Mike who watched the podcast and listened to the radio show last week. And he questioned me about a statement I made about the Black Lives Matter was a communist organization and it was run by a white Jewish guy. And so I appreciated that email, and I went back and I looked at it, and I found out that I made a mistake because the white Jewish guy that I thought about actually didn't run Black Lives Matter. This was back during the Ferguson days. And he was with a group called MORE, which was a Missouri version of ACORN. And he was paying all the Black Lives Matter people at Ferguson. They were paying those people like $5,000 for their room and board and everything to stay there and protest. And he was handing out the money, but he doesn't run Black Lives Matter. However, if you do look, you will see that there's a big contingent of the Jewish people in the United States who do support Black Lives Matters. But they just got slapped in the face because Black Lives Matter came out and called the treatment by Israel of the Palestinians as genocide. So while there are some Jews in America who support Black Lives Matters, others are upset because they're against Israel. Now, to make my point about the communist piece, I was able to send Mike an email that talked about the founding of Black Lives Matter. And basically, in 2013, with a Twitter hashtag of Black Lives Matter, after neighborhood watchman George Zimmerman was acquitted in the Trayvon Martin killing, radical left activists Alicia Garza, Patrice Colliers, and Opal Tometi claimed credit for the slogan and the hashtag. Garza, Colliers, and Tometi all work for the front groups of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. FSRO is a hereditary descendant of the new communist movement. And you can find plenty of information online that Black Lives Matter really was and really is part of the Communist Party USA, the international communist movement to destroy the United States. And as I said last week, don't doubt that China's giving money to them, just like the Russians gave money to the Sierra Club to stop fracking, okay? There's plenty of foreign interference in this. They are loving it. And China is making hay about these riots in the United States and how we're so immoral because we treat our black people so bad. It's all a lie. It's all a put on. And you've got to see through that. You've got to know who you are. And you've got to stand for the truth. And you've got to tell people who you believe this nonsense that show me the statistics about racial problems in the United States. Show me how we haven't made progress. They can't. It's all a lie. And the other lie that I want to talk to you before we take our next break is the whole COVID-19 thing. So I'm going to play one last clip here before we take a break and wrap up the show. But this is about the science deniers in our government and how they believed all this nonsense and they still won't give it up. Listen to Dr. Atlas.
Virus tonight is Dr. Scott Atlas, senior fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. Dr. Atlas, thank you very much for being here. So, what's your reaction to that? Why are we being encouraged to go to these mass gatherings and protests, but yet you've still got businesses in lockdown and schools and churches in lockdown?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, Martha. I think the big question is really why these businesses and schools are closed to begin with. Really, there is an obvious denial of the science and of the data. I mean, we know that the WHO yesterday said, quote, it's very rare, unquote, to have asymptomatic people transmit. We know there's really no risk to young people. 99.9% of deaths are to people under 24, which means the universities and the schools should open. There's this bizarre fixation on stopping cases when cases are being defined by a positive test. The only thing that matters are the cases that are serious, that require hospitalizations or death. And when you look all over the world, countries that have opened or partially opened, like Switzerland, the Netherlands, Denmark, Austria, they are not experiencing a higher number of hospitalizations or deaths. And this is weeks out already. They are accelerating their openings. And the same thing goes for the states here. When you look, as I did today, at Florida, Texas, Georgia, they may have more cases, but that doesn't matter if it's only people that are not going to have a significant problem with the infection. When we open up, we're going to have more infections if there's a contagious disease present. When we test more, we're going to have more cases. That's not the issue. The issue is to make sure we don't have those people who are going to get super sick or die get infected. That's the point. That's the denial of the science going on here with these closures. And the leadership of the states and the others, really all over the world, sort of let that fear impact their decision making. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Nobody questions, by the way, why the WHO says 3 feet, yet the United States says 6 feet. The science behind the 6 feet is completely sloppy and what I would call lame. Nobody gives, by the way, publicity to the WHO's recommendation, quote, they do not recommend masks for the general public, unquote. Even in their updated note, if you bother to read their whole technical note, there's a tremendous amount of fear, and there's a lot of smart people using what I would call sloppy thinking here.
Yeah, sloppy thinking. I wish it was just sloppy thinking. It's politically motivated. They're trying to cripple our nation. And this is the reality. The science is clear. Stop wearing the masks. We've got to, I can't understand where it was 92 degrees here in Ohio, and millions of people are working like in factories, being forced to wear masks all day long that do nothing. Where are the unions? How come they haven't sued? It's disgusting. We're going to talk about some lawsuits that are happening when we continue the show, but we're going to wrap up the radio show now. Those of you on the radio, if you want to watch the rest of the podcast, it goes on for like another 30 minutes. Just go to wethepeopleconvention.org and pick up where we left off. We're sure glad that you joined us on the radio this week. We'll be back again next week. And I hope you'll share the show with others. Tell other people about it. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org. You can watch it on your phone, on your computer, on your laptop, any way you want. But thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back again next week. You're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast. And I'm Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312.
The Buckeye Institute was founded in 1989, and we're the longest serving free market think tank in the state of Ohio. My goal is removing barriers to prosperity that have been put in place by government. We want for Ohio to be the freest and most prosperous state in the country.
The Buckeye Institute is a source of common sense ideas that will have an impact on the nation as well as the state of Ohio.
All right. Thanks for sticking with us for the podcast. We sure appreciate you staying on the line. We've got some really important stories to talk about. I did want to, follow up with the, this Barr, situation. There were plenty of clips in the interview from AG Barr, but they took on different topics. So I've actually got a bunch of video in this segment. So just bear with me. I'll try not to say too much between them. I'll just introduce them. But this is Rick Grendell, the guy just stepped down as a director of national intelligence, who he declassified and put out all these documents that showed how bad the Flynn case was, showed how there was no evidence in the ObamaGate stuff and all that. And on this interview, he's asked about his definition of the deep state. And I wanted to just play this short clip for you. Listen to what he says.
We're no longer at the point, Dave, where it's Republican versus Democrat. This is now Washington versus the rest of America. And what I would say that the deep state is the system in Washington that protects its own. Everybody who gets a job in the federal government has to live in that area largely. And that means that they float from one agency to another. They're dependent upon the federal government. The media that lives there is dependent upon Washington, D.C. being large and big and powerful. And when Republicans or outsiders like Donald Trump come in and say, you know what, let's shrink this, let's cut this, let's change this, there is this rise up of people protecting their city, protecting the state that they have built up. And when we have economic crashes, Washington, D.C. is never hit because the federal government has a bunch of workers that continue getting paychecks. When we had COVID and people were cut, why is it that all of the people that were standing up saying, stay at home, don't work, put on a face mask, don't go out and participate in the commerce, all of the people warning us and telling us that were people who had jobs?
Yeah, people who had jobs, right? So it's D.C. versus the USA. This ain't a soccer match. This is serious stuff. We got a real problem, and we've got to clean that up. But as I've said to you in the past, that's why equal justice under the law is so critical. The first step is we have to show that we're all living under the same legal system. Whether you're George Floyd, okay, who deserves the justice against those police officers, or you're Jim Comey, or you're Hillary Clinton. And so it's really important. And I want to play this segment from AG Bill Barr when he talks about ObamaGate, because I think you'll like what he's going to say.
The Durham team has been working very aggressively to move forward. And as I've also said, this isn't being driven by producing a report. We are trying to get to a point where we can hold accountable anyone who crossed the line and committed a criminal violation. So, here's the thing. For the first time in American history, police organizations and the national security organizations were used to spy on a campaign. And there was no basis for it. And the media largely drove that, and all kinds of sensational claims were being made about the president that could have affected the election. And then later on in his administration, there were actions taken that really appear to be efforts to sabotage his campaign. And that has to be looked at. And if people want to say that I'm political because I am looking at those potential abuses of power, so be it. But that's the job of the Attorney General.
If you had to characterize the Durham report as you know it now, is it going to be eye-opening for Americans, or is this going to be kind of a blip on the road to?
I'm very troubled by what has been called to my attention so far, but I'm not going to characterize it beyond that.
So that sounds to me like a man who's going to prosecute. And while he's not going to go after Obama or Biden, okay, and I understand why, because it's political, even though that's wrong. You can't just be exempt from our laws because you're running for office, right? We already went through that with Hillary Clinton. And there's so much more to go on. And there's more going on with the Republicans are subpoenaing all kinds of people. Lindsey Graham is finally doing something, and we're going to have a lot more people called to testify. But ladies and gentlemen, I am encouraged by the fact that our lead law enforcement officer, AG Barr, who I have said to you more than once, I think he is the most important American since Abraham Lincoln. I say that because I literally believe the fate of our nation is in his hands. And boy, does he have a bunch on his plate. But I think this is the guy. And I think that he's going to restore equal justice under the law, and that these people are going to go to prison. And I just sure hope so. I sure hope so. And that goes for, equal justice for General Flynn. That crazy judge is still playing games. That there's no legal precedent for them not to dismiss the case against General Mike Flynn, and yet he still won't do it. But we're going to win that. They're wrong. The courts are going to throw him out. That Judge Sullivan should be impeached, and we're going to get some things done. The other thing that I said, there's a lot on Barr's plate. And so, I've talked to you about our censorship. I told you about what Facebook is doing to us. We used to get 2,000-3,000 views whenever I post something. Now it's a couple hundred at best. Our website is being blocked. It's not right. And so I was very happy to hear AG Barr talk about that in this interview with Bret Baier.
Wrongdoing.
The president is counting on you and your department to crack down on social media platforms for what he calls censorship, including his own tweets. You said the law allows these companies to operate, and it's been stretched beyond its original intent. So you think these firms are somehow censoring the president and his supporters?
Well, I think there are clearly these entities are now engaged in censorship, and they originally held themselves out as open forum where third parties could come and express their views, and they built up a tremendous network of eyeballs. A lot of market power based on that presentation, and now they are acting much more like publishers because they're censoring particular viewpoints and putting their own content in there to diminish the impact of various people's views.
So is there some action that you're taking?
Well, we are looking, as many others are, at changing Section 230, which is a rule that provides some protection for these companies.
Which would require Congress.
Which would require Congress, yes.
See, there's the problem, because Congress, with Nancy Pelosi running the House, isn't going to change Section 230, sure as heck not before the election. You mark my words, before this election, Twitter is going to shut down Donald Trump's account. Mark my words. This is just the beginning, folks. These riots, this coronavirus nonsense, this is just the beginning. From now to November, they're going to do whatever it takes to take back control over you and I. And if they ever gain control, we will never win an election again. Ever. Mark my words. So if you vote for any Democrat socialist, anyone, I don't care if it's township trustee or school board or city council or mayor or Congress or anything else, if you vote for any Democratic socialist, you are working against your own best interest. You are working against the United States of America. It's that bad. There is no going back. The left has taken over the Democratic Socialist Party, and they're out to destroy America, and they will do whatever it takes, including killing us, to do that. Am I clear? Do you understand? Do you agree? Then act like you do. We're going to take another short break, and we'll be back. You're listening to the We the People Convention, News and Opinion, radio show and podcast, and I'm Tom Zawistowski.
This is Jordan Seculo with the American Center for Law and Justice. At the ACLJ, we are committed to fighting the deep state and protecting freedom, the right to life, religious liberty, and fighting for the Constitution. The ACLJ has experienced tremendous success in litigating cases at all levels of the judiciary, from the federal district court level to the Supreme Court of the United States. We have offices in Washington, D.C., Jerusalem, and all around the world. You can find out more about the ACLJ and join us by visiting aclj.org.
Did you know that the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio is the largest statewide life group in the state? Are you tired of the compromised approach to pro-life legislation that has been the status quo for far too long? Since 2017, the efforts of the Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio has changed that approach, closing loopholes and making pro-life laws enforceable. Visit rtlaohio.org or call 440-668-4049 for details. The Right to Life Action Coalition of Ohio, the proven place to go for lasting pro-life.
All right, we're back for our final segment of the podcast, and we've got a couple other big stories to talk about. We had a shock here in Ohio today. We're not sure what it means, but the evil Dr. Amy Acton, Ohio's health director, stepped down to take a new position as Governor Mike DeWine's chief health advisor, whatever the heck that means. So now, in a situation where we have lost billions of dollars of revenue in our state, we just cut $700 million from schools, right? Mike DeWine is going to create a new position to put this failed health director in? What's with that? Now, I don't know what's with that, but I know one thing. This is nefarious. There's not anything good here. DeWine's not taking this action because it's the right thing to do. He's taking it to advance his agenda and to protect her somehow. And hopefully we're not going to protect her. Now, there's been a bunch of lawsuits, and this could be part of the reason that she's stepping down. There was a lawsuit filed in Lorain County by a candidate named Gerald Phillips, who is accusing DeWine and Acton of approximately 90 Ohio Revised Code violations because of what they did in the election. So this guy was a candidate, and the fact that DeWine and Acton illegally canceled the election, which was supposed to be March 17th, he's finally filed filing a lawsuit, and Acton is named personally in that. And so hopefully that's going to go on. There was another lawsuit that was filed this week with 7 restaurants in Northeast Ohio filed a lawsuit against Dr. Amy Acton and Governor Mike DeWine. They say that the health and safety guidelines issued by the state are unreasonable and unconstitutional. The businesses in the suit include Diamondback Bar, the Hairy Buffalo Island Bar and Grill, Grayton Road Town Tavern, Park Street Cantina, Town Hall, Bar 30, and Frank and Tony's. The suit was filed in Lake County. So that's another lawsuit. And then there was a lawsuit that just came out on Thursday that is really at the core of this. It's a lawsuit that basically is a mother who is being denied the ability to touch her daughter because her daughter is sick, and they're trying to protect the daughter from COVID, and they won't let the mother have physical contact with her daughter for months. That's how sick this is. And so that lawsuit has been filed. Okay, and I think it's got a good chance. They say that it's a violation, that the state cannot prevent human contact and personal contact between family members unless they have, real reason to do it, and it's violation of the defendant's constitutional rights under the Ohio Federal Constitution, and includes Article 1, Section 1 of the Ohio Constitution. Good for them. We got to keep filing these lawsuits. We've got to get damages, and we've got to show DeWine and Acton that they never, ever should do this again. Every business that lost money should be suing the state of Ohio to try to get their money back because it was illegally taken from them. So that was a big story. Now, another story today, this week, every week they give you the unemployment numbers. And I know last week, President Trump and those guys said, the unemployment rate went down to 13%. Well, here's the bottom line. Today, this week, on Thursday, when they announced the 1.5 million new Americans filed for unemployment, this is the problem. We're still shedding jobs. That has to slow down even more. We're adding to the total. And so the problem is still bigger than they say. And the stock market, folks, is not the economy. Don't be fooled. I mean, I was as surprised as any of you to see the stock market was back up to like 28,000, almost back to where before COVID. Now, when this news came out about the unemployment, it dropped like 1,000 points right away. But what you got to understand is we're still shedding jobs. That's a big problem. And we've got to be concerned about it. The other thing we got to be concerned about is the debt. The federal debt reached $26 trillion this week. That's up. The federal debt had topped $24 trillion for the first time on April 7th. It then climbed another $1 trillion in just 28 days, topping $25 trillion for the first time on May 5th. And then only 35 days later, had the debt topped the $25 trillion threshold to this week, it topped $26 trillion. Folks, this is seriously bad, seriously bad. And yes, our government threw all kinds of money at us to try to, to cushion the damage. And I'm thankful for the money that our business got. And I hope your business got some money. And I hope you've taken the $1,200 that they sent to each adult and you're spending it wisely. You're giving it to businesses to keep them going. But this should have never happened. As Dr. Atlas said in the video I played, there shouldn't have been lockdowns. We never should have stopped our economy. This is horrible what we did. And we're going to pay for this. This $26 trillion, we're going to pay for this. Now, hopefully, we're not going to have another bill come through. They're still talking about it. But enough is enough. We've got to get back to work, and we've got to rebuild our economy. Because if we don't, we're going to go bankrupt. We can. It's a country. Your dollar can be worth nothing. That's what the communist left would like to have happen to us. We've got to be smart. And we can't let these blue states keep us in lockdown forever. You can't do that. You got to open up the businesses. And remember what Dr. Atlas said, because what you're hearing What we're hearing in Ohio is Mike DeWine is talking about the cases are increasing because of the protests. And because now we're letting people go back to work, more people are getting the virus. Yeah, but they're not getting sick. This is the whole thing about this lie they told you. This is how they scared you. They told you that if you got coronavirus, you're going to die. The facts are that if you get the coronavirus, 90% of you won't even know it, won't even get sick. And the WHO even talked about this week, and then they walked it back, but asymptomatic. In other words, you get it and don't get sick. There's plenty of evidence suggesting that you can't even spread it. And most of the people are asymptomatic. Don't buy the lies. And so they're going to try to do a second shutdown because we have more cases. But as Dr. Atlas said, that's not what you look at. You look at who's so sick they need to be hospitalized and what's going on with deaths. And the deaths are going down across the world. That's what Dr. Atlas showed you. That's the reality. But don't doubt that they're trying to set up a second lockdown because they know we can't handle it economically. And they're trying to destroy the economy so that Trump can't win. Know the game we're in. Fight back, right? Fight back. And I hope you did what I asked you to do last week, which was go to your local police station and buy them pizza or make them a cake or, get them gift cards or something like that. We've got to do that. Now I'm going to end with a story that I think is just great because, as you know, we really love Judicial Watch. We the People Convention have been involved with Judicial Watch from the beginning. I know Tom Fitton personally. I know Chris Farrell. They came and sent Eric to our We the People Convention last October to speak. And so I just love the way Judicial Watch fights back. So what did they do this week? You got to love it. If you remember, if you saw the news, the radical leftist mayor of Washington, D.C., right? She was so upset because President Trump brought in the National Guard and shut down the riots in Washington. See, she didn't want the riots to be shut down. She wanted the White House to burn, but they stopped it. So she went and she named a street Black Lives Matter Lane, and then she allowed them to paint in yellow paint, giant letters, Black Lives Matter on this whole street in Washington. So you know what Tom Fitton did? You got to love this. Judicial Watch asked D.C. mayor for permission to paint "No one is above the law" on a D.C. street. Because D.C.'s liberal mayor Muriel Bowser allowed activists to paint Black Lives Matter on a street near the White House, the legal group Judicial Watch has asked the mayor for permission to paint its motto, "Because no one is above the law," on a street on Capitol Hill. The message would be the identical size and coloring of the D.C. government's Black Lives Matter political message on 16th Street Northwest, said Judicial Watch in a June 11th press release. Mayor Bowser made a decision to turn D.C. streets into a forum for public expression, said Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Judicial Watch seeks equal access to use this new forum to educate Americans by painting our organization's motto and motivation, "Because no one is above the law," on a Capitol Hill street. This rule of law message is timely and is a reminder that the rule of law applies to and protects all Americans, he said. If we are unlawfully denied access and face viewpoint discrimination, we are prepared to go to court to vindicate our First Amendment rights, said Fitton. I love you, Tommy. I love Tom Fitton. I love Judicial Watch. That's how you fight back. That's how you win. And I'll tell you what, you don't want to go to court against Judicial Watch. You don't want to go to court against Judicial Watch. So I bet you they're going to get it done, or they're going to get Black Lives Matter removed from that street. I hope that makes you feel a little better. I hope that the quotes, the clips from A.G. Barr make you feel a little better. I think that you're seeing that this fight is now engaged. They are not as big as they pretend to be. Don't buy the lies. Don't give in. Don't support these corporations that give in. Don't support these sports teams that give in. Call them what they are. They're the racists. If Black Lives Matter cared about the black lives of young blacks in Chicago who were murdered every day, I'd be a big Black Lives Matter supporter. But they don't give a damn about Black lives. They're a fraud. And anybody who says all lives matter is racist, they're the racist. Look them in the face and call them a racist. The truth will win out, but you've got to speak the truth. You got to tell the truth. You got to send people to our website so they can see the truth. I post all this stuff on there so that you can share it. And again, we need donations, and we need people to come on the website, because now we're going to have to spend money. I'm looking now, we're going to be spending $1,000 a week buying radio ads to try to get people to hear our message, because we can't be on social media. We need your support. I hope you will do that. We want to make the billboard that we're going to try to do, or We Support the Police. I think that's a really good billboard that we put together. That's going to cost like $10,000. But we're going to do it because we do support the police, and we're not going to let people just push us around and say, we're going to defund the police. No, you're not. We're going to fight you, and we're going to defeat you. So tell others about our podcast. Make sure that you write to me. I appreciate Matt writing to me and questioning me about the Jewish guy I thought was running Black Lives Matter. I'm glad I could correct that. I'm glad I could answer his question about Black Lives Matter being a communist group. Just write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. All right? And then we'll be back again next week. But you're listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion radio show and podcast. And I'm Tom Zawistowski. And we will never, ever stop fighting for our personal freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and for our Constitution. You have a good week.